parents, the child goes to the teacher who will guide that child.
What do you mean by external moral authority? You use that expression a lot.
Materialism has to do with when you are
Hello, it's great to have all of you back here with us in the course in Values and Spirituality. We are now dealing with Unit 3 of Book 1. I'm here in the studio with Sister Denise, the author of these books, and today we will be looking at the introduction of this section. We will also be looking at a global perspective on education in values, and those of you who are following us with the text, we are on page 91 of Book 1. Sister Denise, you start off by saying education in values has been given importance by the Indian government since independence, as the old methods of dealing with antisocial behavior have been ineffective. Could you first tell us what is meant by the old methods of dealing with antisocial behavior before telling us why it's not effective and how an introduction of a new system will prove to be effective?
We've been talking about these two strands. One is the more modern, democratic, liberal, human rights-based strand, and the old method is punitive, top-down, assuming that young people are inherently likely to be bad and old people are likely to be good. And what has happened is that, moralizing and finger wagging and all of this has not made any difference. Nobody cares about that. I remember being with a very large group of 16-year-old boys and asking them some questions, and they were with their teachers and maybe some parents. And I asked them, if you want to do something bad, knowing that you'll be punished for it, how will you handle this situation? And they said, oh, it's very easy. We'll get somebody else to take the blame. And that really puts it in a nutshell, that the old system isn't effective, and in fact it encourages people to be a bit more devious and dishonest than they would otherwise have been. And so now we're looking at very new ways of encouraging people to really follow the voice of conscience and do the right thing, not out of fear, not because of punishment, but because it is much more profitable to do the right thing.
Spiritually profitable.
Spiritually, physically, in every other way.
You go on to say, our leaders have not succeeded in solving the crisis, and the authorities of religion, sociology, politics, media and education are also compromised by corruption and dishonesty. Are they aware of this?
I think it's pretty widely known that there is a lot of corruption in all of the different areas of the state, actually, because it's been widely publicized and there's lots of people who try to address the subject. There are even political parties that ride on a ticket of I will take out corruption, and then they get shown up to be corrupt as well, So corruption is very much entrenched in how things are done in India, and it's really connected with the clash of the archaic social attitudes and values and then the modern democratic, liberal, human rights-based, honesty-based approach. And these two ways just are not compatible. So from the angle of law, it's all corrupt. From the angle of the archaic values, well, that's how we do things. And they've always been done like that. And nobody minded before, so why are you minding now, kind of thing. But, you know, the prevailing thinking is not with the archaic social values. People really give a lot of importance to human rights, to liberal policies, to the democratic processes, to these values are considered higher than the archaic values. But there's still a problem because of compartmentalization, where somebody on one hand will say, yes, human rights, liberal values, and so on. And then on the other hand, when the situation arises, they'll go for the other way of doing things and keep these two parts of their lives separate. But of course, the law of karma, we've been talking about that, the law of karma doesn't recognize compartmentalization. If you do something which is against the principles of karma, good karma, you will pay. And you will pay in a very fixed way, in a very fixed amount, and there's no ifs, ands or buts. You can't avoid it because it's not enforced by a human being or a human agency. It's a natural law.
The first part of that sentence says our leaders have not succeeded in solving the crisis. There is full knowledge of that, isn't there? There isn't anyone under the illusion that things are getting better when they're not.
Of course, and I think what people do is they minimize the problem. Sometimes they will maximize it according to the different convenience, but okay, we have a crisis, we're still alive, we're still running, the courts are still operating, so we won't deal with the crisis. It's not as bad. We have another crisis which is bigger, so we'll pay attention on that.
Okay. There are many opinions as to whether secularism or religious authority is more effective in inspiring people to inculcate values. Are either of those effective?
You know, in the moment of independence, India divided into India, then you have East Pakistan, West Pakistan. And Pakistan elected to become a Islamic theocracy, which means religious authority, in the view that using the Sharia system was more effective. But India, under the leadership of Gandhi, elected to become a secular republic, and they created the constitution, which was very much inspired by the French and the American Constitution: liberty, equality, fraternity, all of these slogans. And basically what we've seen is that both of them have problems. And so what we're looking for is some third way that will work. So what I'm hoping is that some of the ideas that are contained in this course can potentially form the foundation of a third way. And in the third way, what I'm trying to do is reactivate conscience and make people very aware that they have choice in all of these matters, and that they need to take into consideration the laws of karma. So I'm really wanting to blend some elements that are part of the religious and spiritual legacy, other elements that give importance to human rights and the inherent value of the human being. You know.
Okay, we'll hear more about the third way as the course progresses.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. You go on to say, none of the proposed approaches have been successful because all of them have been based on the policy of cajoling, coercing and legislating people to conform to certain norms. We must now reconsider our assumptions and apply new approaches and radically different solutions. Through all of this time of none of the current systems working, no one has found or thought of looking for a different approach?
I think that many thinkers have been looking for another approach, but they always end up back in these two camps, the religious camp or the humanist camp. And the problem is the morality being skewed towards the patriarchy and not considering men and women on an equal footing, being under the influence of or preferring man-made laws to working with the laws of karma. And that's because they didn't have enough information about the laws of karma, because the laws of karma are basically described by different religious philosophers. And the difference in this course, according to me, is that the spiritual knowledge that is given by the Supreme Soul is much, much more complete in comparison with spiritual knowledge that you find in the traditional religious literature. And there are certain areas where there are variations, quite big variances. So I felt that, and I experimented with this a great deal to see that if this material is true, if this information is true, then it should work. And this is why it's very much of an experimental course, because we see whether it works or not fairly quickly. And when I was asked to write this, it was because the traditional methods didn't work. And my main effort had been to try to pinpoint where it doesn't work and why it doesn't work, and is there something, some missing ingredients which we can include so that it does work. And I feel that we did succeed in doing that. And so the, as it were, the proof is in the pudding. So we have to see, as more and more people start using this according to the intended way of it being used, what exactly happens to their lives. So I did a bit of surveying and checking with people with the results after having taught it for a few years in different environments, and I found that definitely the people who studied this raised the quality of their values in all cases.
That's very beautiful. Very heartwarming to know that it has such an effect. Okay, we go on to paragraph 2 on page 91, where you start off by saying it considers approaches, this unit considers approaches which focus on universal core values acceptable to most religions, nations and cultures. And this caught my attention because it's refreshingly new and not found in any constitution of any country in the world. People are viewed in terms of their physical, emotional and spiritual dimensions, thereby differentiating between consciousness and the human body.
Very important.
Yeah. So I think I and the viewer needs as much detail on this as possible.
One of the reasons the course material is so thick, you see, we've got all these books, is because we have to go into it in detail. And so by the time we get to module 4, which is called Consciousness and the Divine, there we really go into the detail of exactly what consciousness is, and it's an entire book. So by the time we reach that book in our discussions, we can understand that there will be several episodes on that. And the way that we've structured this course is we first of all have to really see what the context is, and then narrow our approach to different elements, and then expand on those different elements, and then bring us back to a holistic view of how this all fits into the bigger picture. You see, so we're not we're studying in actually quite a holistic way. We're not just going from somewhere to somewhere and just going in a straight line. We keep going to the big picture, then we go to another area, see how that fits in the big picture, and so on.
You go on to say at the bottom of page 91, all human beings are endowed with the ability to think, to reason, to respond emotionally and rationally to day-to-day moral challenges, and it is in consciousness that values reside. This was one of those moments where I put down my marker and stared at the ceiling for half an hour to digest this. This is powerful stuff.
Well, this is it. People think that values reside out there. And values are, importance that is assigned to something by a person, a thinking, reasoning, living being. And these spiritual values don't exist in the physical world. But people are so oriented to the physical world that they look for spiritual values in society. But here we're really placing it squarely within consciousness, which means that people have to really take responsibility and expect to be held accountable for the values they hold. And if the values they hold are contrary to the natural laws of karma, it will show up, you see. And if they're in line with it, that will also show up, you see. So values are not a matter of fashion or public opinion or the considered view of someone in a position of religious authority or something like this. No, they're more similar to the laws of physics, which says gravity acts in a certain way, thermodynamics acts in a certain way, and in the same way, human values, spiritual values, all of these principles operate in a certain way, and if you act against those natural laws, you will pay for it. It doesn't allow you to do that beyond a certain point.
You speak of these laws that you're referring to as being the natural laws, the laws of karma. You spoke of other spiritual laws. You speak about consciousness. If this is so all operational, all pervading, why is it a secret? And why do just a handful of human beings know about it?
You have to look at the context. You see, we live in a context of traditions, of religions, of belief systems, of superstitions, of preconceptions and prejudices, which are very, very powerful. And the material that we're working with here is relatively new. In some ways, you can say that it's as old as the hills, but there are many parts of it which are absolutely not. And so the whole package of the spiritual knowledge that we're working with and the way that we're working in the fabric of human society, that has not been done before like this. And so this has been around for, this course has been around for 16 years. And it's been experimented with in all kinds of different countries and different educational establishments, different age groups, different gatherings of different types of people. And anything new like this has to be tested in all sorts of different ways. And now we are discussing it on the air so that people can then have another level of access to it. And we see how this goes and what the consequences are. We have to be very much open to the feedback that comes.
You end off this by saying, we look closely, therefore, at the aspects of consciousness that relate to the development or loss of values. What do you mean by the aspects of consciousness?
Well, consciousness is very subtle.
Yeah, I would say.
Has anybody ever seen a mind? No. You have one, but you don't know what it looks like. You don't know quite how it functions, but you know that you have one. Then you have intelligence. You know, people are always trying to figure out what exactly is intelligence. You know, are animals intelligent? Can spiders hear us? You know, there's all these kinds of experiments that go on to ascertain once and for all what the different aspects of consciousness are. But still it remains a bit ephemeral because it is not material. Now, we are clearly going to be looking at what is the mind, how does it work, what is intelligence, how do you use it, what's the difference, negative, positive thoughts, attitudes, are they sustainable, are they tenable, are they incoherent, are they coherent? All of this we analyze, so we're really looking at many aspects of consciousness in this, because ultimately my thesis is that you need to rely on conscience.
And how does conscience relate to consciousness?
Well, this is also something that we examine later in the text. You know, throughout the entire process of this course of study, we're thinking about consciousness. As we move forward in our thoughts about consciousness, it's going to shift one way to another way to another way as we learn different aspects about it. So there's a lot of discovery going on.
You speak on page 89 as the objectives of Unit 3 as being the following: to put forward reasons for the erosion of human values, illustrate ethical dilemmas, outline the Government of India's policies on education in human values, propose a value-based approach to education, describe how to develop moral muscle, that I liked a lot, moral muscle, determine what is necessary to build a sound character. That's a lot. That packs quite a punch.
And those objectives are not limited to Unit 3. They're really always going to be present throughout the entire course, and we need to think about them, write about them, discuss about them, because when we come to this course, we come with a lot of preconceptions. And the system of dialogue is something I use a lot in how this course is taught, because people need to listen to each other's opinions and then see where the majority are and how they move through the course of discussion when you want to ascertain what is true about the particular subject that you are examining. And in this way, I think people are going to learn to process concepts, to think constructively, coherently, logically, so that they can actually defend a particular position that they hold, which is not just a matter of shouting down the opposition, but that you can really explain why you hold such and such a truth to be true, and why you espouse such and such a value, and why you put your values in the particular order of priorities that you do, you see. Because then you become independent. And while an independent thinker is considered maybe a bit of a wild card, I feel that people who are uninfluenced have greater freedom in their thinking and are less likely to try to blame somebody for things going wrong, but they will take responsibility. I freely chose to do this, knowing the consequences.
Sister Denise, very powerful message. Thank you.
Thank you.
On my behalf and the viewers' behalf, I really thank Sister Denise for, well, in a sense, opening our eyes to that which has actually never been articulated before on such a scale. So I'm really looking forward to listening to Sister Denise in forthcoming episodes as far as the rest of Unit 3 is concerned, and I'd like you to join us as well. Take care and thank you. Goodbye.